Are you awake? Hey, good. I get the honor to introduce the last speaker in brief. A briefest introduction for Jeff. Jeff hunts, Jeff fishes, Jeff's good. Jeff and I go back, get a little closer. Jeff and I go back a ways. We used to play basketball together. Now you look at me and you think, nah, no way. But surprisingly, we won more than one tournament together. Now you understand, to be good, to win tournaments, you don't have to be good, but it sure helps if you got good friends. Goes in play. Jeff is a biometrician with the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, works with Fisheries. He's an active member of the American Fisheries Society. One of his goals is to bring more fisheries individuals to the Iowa Water Conference. He got his degrees from Iowa State University. A biometrician, by the way, is an individual that works with science, linking empirical information one versus the other. So with that, and with Pat doing marvels with technology.
It's all good.
Can you dance on the table until the slides come up?
I got a story.
Okay.
I'm not a great storyteller, but this reminds me a lot of the very first presentation I gave at a professional meeting. And this was long enough ago that it was when you actually made slides and had them in the carousel. And I'm going along and I'm giving my talk, and unbeknownst to me, it's on an automatic timer setting. So I'm going through and I'm talking about the slide, whoop, it goes away. And this is my very first time, and I am nervous as all get out. And that happened about 4 or 5 times before the person up in the back running the controller finally switched it over, and it would only go when I told it to go. So I'm used to technological challenges. Oh, yes, yep, I am, almost.
How about computers?
You know, I'm supposedly decent with technology, but sometimes we all have our technological challenges. First thing, I have no idea if I'm going to get this done in the time frame allowed, so we're just going to go with the flow. But I want to thank every one of you for sticking this out. It's been a long conference. We had things going on yesterday. I think there was a lot of celebrating last night, which was probably a lot of fun. And I want to thank you for sticking it out and being here this afternoon. So that's number one. Number two, I'm going to get some of my acknowledgments out of the way right now. First off, I'm the biometrician for Fisheries for the state of Iowa. In the office right next to me is Ben Dodd. He is our fisheries biologist for central Iowa. And he is the one that's responsible for the Ames area, the Des Moines area, a lot of our central Iowa metropolitan areas. He and I bounce ideas off each other all the time. And so he's dealt with a lot of our urban fishing issues, and that is what I'm here to talk about today is some urban fishing.
Which file is yours?
No, I don't know which one. But you know what? Hey, I have it over here.
There's Kopaska.
Oh,
Do you see it?
there, I didn't see it on the desktop. That's it. Yep, Kopaska. There you go.
Is that your last name?
It was this morning.
It's changing right now.
It might be changing
we'll pull up
right
somebody
now.
else's presentation. No. Okay, I think he's.
So Ben Dodd and I work together. I want to acknowledge him. He's brought a lot of thoughts together about urban fishing and urban fishing opportunities. Steve Conradi, he was here earlier today. He did his undergraduate degree, or his graduate work here at Iowa State in the fisheries, and did a lot of the work looking at, assessing, trying to figure out what's going on with urban fishing opportunities here in Iowa. And then somebody that I hope a number of you meet in the future is Tyler Stubbs. We changed over one of our hatchery biologist positions to become our urban biologist, and he's the one that's going to interact with a lot of our urban professionals and try and do more in our urban settings to improve fishing opportunities. So today I'm going to talk about fishing's future in Iowa and can urban stormwater be a magic bullet? You might wonder, why do we care about fishing and fishing's future in Iowa? Well, fish are kind of one of the end products of this water thing that we've all got going on. And fish are one of my favorite things about water. And another one of my favorite things about water is, you know, one of these superpowers that I have. So, some really cool things that we can do with water. Now, we're here to talk about water, but I think the reason Rick invited me is because we're going to see fish. And as you saw next to Rick, I'm not a small individual. That gives you a little bit of scale about how big. That's about a 45-inch, 35 to 40-pound muskie right there. And we're going to see lots of fish during the course of this presentation because I like fish. I like pictures of fish. And seriously, it's about the fish. But, all right, we'll get to the point. Iowa is becoming increasingly urban. I'm going to tell you a lot of things you already know, but I'm going to try and tell a story that maybe is a little bit different than what you hear all the time. So we're increasingly urban and we're water rich. We have a lot of water. So why talk about fishing's future and urban fishing? First thing we're going to contemplate today. We need to look at where we've been, where we are, and where we're going, and then end this off with what can we do to make a difference when it comes down to it. Urban fishing. This is what we're looking for. This is right here in town. This is Ada Hayden Lake, and this is my daughter. You may pick out over the course of this presentation my daughters, because I like to show cute pictures of kids and fish. So, but this is one of the things we're after. We're in an urban setting and we're getting people going fishing. So why worry about urban fishing? Well, one thing is demographics. Now you may think demographics is someone from a different culture than we normally experience here in Iowa, or this young man who has a teeny tiny little fish that he caught, but he's happy about it. But that's not necessarily the demographic that we're talking about. Here's some information that I've pulled together. I don't have a whole lot of stats and data slides. This is one of them. I'm kind of a crossover between yesterday morning in Chad and this morning with a lot of data. This is total fishing licenses issued in Iowa. This is some research that I've been doing, looking at what we've done since the 1940s, and a report that was done in the 1960s said, hey, things are going great. We are selling lots of fishing licenses. In fact, we're selling more licenses than the rate of population growth in the state of Iowa. That's awesome. Then we hit this peak in the 70s, and we've been dropping. That's not a good thing. Now, why? Well, add a little more data. These dots are the population in urban counties in the state of Iowa. These dots are the population in rural counties in the state of Iowa since 1950. So we were tracking pretty well with the totals through 1972, but since urban population has gone up, this line corresponds pretty well to that line. Not so great for fishing, because if you're familiar with fisheries, wildlife, etc. in the state of Iowa, we're completely funded by the dollars generated by these license sales. If we're not selling more licenses, we can't do much work. We want to keep doing work and providing these opportunities. So we need this to stop going down. So, a little bit more about that. Iowa's population, looked at some stuff in 2010. The rural part of Iowa, 600,000 and change people live there. Same kind of number range for small towns, medium towns, and then over 1 million in our large cities. So 20-ish% of the population in rural areas, 20-ish in small towns, etc. Now, around 2000, Rick may remember, before that, you went to whatever, you went to the hardware store, you went to the DNR office in Clear Lake, you filled out a sheet of paper, and that was your fishing license. After 2000, you could go to Walmart or wherever else and get on the fancy little computer, and you got your fishing license electronically instead of the little sheet of paper that went in a file cabinet in the basement of the Wallace Building. Since we have that electronic data, we know a whole lot more about the people who fish since 2000 than before. So we looked at this data in 2010. We know where these people live that bought the fishing license. So 76,000 of them live in rural areas and so on. So we know that 28% of our sales are in rural areas, 23 to small towns, et cetera, et cetera. But since we know where the licensed buyers are and where the people live, here's where the rubber hits the road. 12% of people that live in rural areas participate in fishing. Half of that, only 6.5% of people that live in urban areas participate in fishing. This is where all the growth is happening, but it's not necessarily where people are deciding to be involved in fishing. Now, did the same kind of analysis looking at the licenses we sold in 2002, 2006, and 2011. You will notice these numbers are very static. They don't change much. That means that these levels of participation are really not changing to any great degree. Great participation from people that live in rural areas, or at least much more acceptable levels, and not so wonderful levels of participation from people that live in urban areas. This is not helping this whole issue of selling more fishing licenses. All right, so we kind of need to look at where we've been. So, oh, this is sweet. I tried for the first time today to put the notes, that go with your presentation, because I normally just memorize everything. Yeah, I don't have the notes. So I'm going to go from memory now. This is awesome. All right, so this is from 1933, the Iowa Conservation Plan, and right here, Iowa's greatest recreational asset, the lakes. Up here in the darker, you see the natural lakes that we had in the state of Iowa in the 1930s. Down here in these lighter icons is where they planned to put lakes in the future. Now I'm going from memory, but basically what they said is you need to have a lake about every 40 miles. That way it's about 15-mile drive, or at most a 25-mile drive, for somebody to go and get to a lake to be able to fish. So they planned to build these down here because people really liked doing the fishing at the lakes that were up there. And there's a couple other cool quotes like, sometimes when I go fishing, I sit and fish, and sometimes I just sit. And some other neat things like that I would like to be able to tell you. So now this little uptick in sales that we have is absolutely related to this last slide, because you may be aware we do have a whole lot of lakes in this part of the world. Some of them were built in the 1930s by the CCC, but the rest of them were built in the 1950s and 1960s at state parks like Lake Darling, Rock Creek, etc., and then our county conservation board lakes like Hickory Grove right a few miles down the road. And after those lakes came online, and it took them their 5 to 8 years to really get to their potential as fisheries, looky there. That's where we topped out. And then that level of interest kind of dropped off. I'm coming up with some stuff here. We don't have a lot of facts, but some other things that occurred is, that first generation that was off of the farm by here had transitioned. A lot of those people were living in urban areas, and we had a pretty good economic boom in this time frame, and people started doing different things and having more disposable income to do things other than just hunt and fish. And that kind of led to some of this drop. All right. Some other information from that conservation plan in 1933, and this shows where they wanted to put more recreational amenities, places that we want to protect the landscape, to, you know, they have natural resource value, etc., things like that. And the quote that they had along with this is that the protection and establishment of natural recreational opportunities stands alongside the other great functions of government, such as building of public roads and public education and things like that. And that's what was written in 1933 in this document. And it sounds very similar to the things that we hear today when we're talking about I will, that we need to, you know, create places that people want to go and want to recreate and want to stay around in Iowa. And we were talking about that 85 years ago, and we're still talking about it today. And I'm pretty sure that if we went to a bunch of these 540 sites, they probably weren't set aside at that point in time, and we still, you know, could probably do that and improve things here today. All right. Fishing. What did fishing look like? This is a photo from the Iowa Conservationist in the 1960s. And fishing in the 1960s and earlier, when we saw that great uptick, was vastly different from today. In that period of time, people often sat along the side of a stream and fished. You know, kids went fishing. They were fishing for catfish and bullheads and suckers and things like that, not so much the game fish that we see today. And one of the changes is that many of these locations where people would just sit and relax and fish, either the lakes have become somewhat degraded, although we're doing a lot of work to fix that, or a lot more fishing at that point in time took place on streams and rivers. And a lot of places in our urban areas along those streams and rivers are places people no longer necessarily feel are acceptable recreational locations. And that has changed quite a bit over the last few decades. So kind of now, we need to look at where we are. Are we on top of the mountain, or do we still have some climbing to do? Angling today looks a lot different than angling 40, 50 years ago. However, some things are the same. We still have a rod and reel, and we still like to hold up our catch and enjoy it. We love to enjoy our catch. A lot of the times the fishing today looks like this, and even kids like to enjoy our catch. But you look a long time ago, and we also like to enjoy our catch, but oftentimes we kept it to eat rather than just playing with it and putting it back. So we're going to get back to this, Iowa fishing license sales, and what happened here, you know, with this drop-off. Now, the nice thing about data is you can figure some things out with it, but the thing that we talk about with data is that we got statistics, lies, and damn lies. And a lot of that has to do with how you present your data. And since it's my data, I can present it however I want. If I look at the data from here to here, I say, we got a huge problem. Well, I want to give you a little better look at this data. And this is our license sales since about 2000. And in 2004, we had been looking at that long-term downtrend, and we said, hey, we got to do something about this. This is not going well. We're going to be out of business pretty quick if we don't make a change in terms of selling these fishing licenses. So since 2004, when we started marketing fishing licenses and started trying to figure out more about who is buying our fishing licenses, things have gotten a little bit better. Now, one thing we figured out is people don't like to fish when it's rainy and nasty. 2008, we happened to have a whole lot of water in the eastern third of the state of Iowa, and as a result, we didn't sell very many fishing licenses. 2009, we sold a whole lot of fishing licenses, and we did that because the economy went in the tank, And not just unemployment was up, but housing starts were down. And the people in Iowa who buy the most fishing licenses are construction trades. They're carpenters, they're plumbers, there's electricians. And when housing starts are up, they are too busy, they're working, getting overtime, everything else. They are not taking time to go fishing, and they're not buying a fishing license. 2009, we sold a whole lot of fishing licenses. One more, 2012, you might remember, we had something like 20 days over 70 or 80 degrees in the month of March in 2012. When it's nice and you get your spring work done, you take time to go fishing. And we sold a whole lot of fishing licenses then. We started to do things that helped us control the sale of fishing licenses and improve it, but there are things outside of our control that we can't do anything about that really have a huge impact too. So what else do we know about anglers? We know that they don't like to travel very far to go fishing. Since 1975, we've been doing surveys, and 2/3 of anglers in the state of Iowa don't want to go very far to fish. That's 200 to 300,000 of our anglers don't want to go anywhere very far from home. They want to stay close to home. So what do we need to do? We need to provide them opportunities close to where they live. Historically, that was a farm pond. We had kids sitting by the farm pond learning to fish with mom and dad or grandma and grandpa. Well, today that's changed a little bit, and now maybe you're understanding where I'm getting to with this conversation. We still have kids, we still like to go fishing, and the wet retention basin in urban areas is one of the places that's pretty important for that. And you know what? Kids in Iowa love to fish. Iowa ranks about 3rd in the country in terms of the percent of our kids that go fishing. It's very, very high. Many states would love to be where we are in terms of having people have that history in fishing and enjoying going fishing. So Iowa kids fish. So where are we? We're becoming increasingly urban. At least half of Iowans grow up fishing, and Iowans prefer to fish close to home. What are we going to do about that? Well, we need to provide opportunities to anglers where they are. And what we're doing on our part from the Iowa DNR is we are creating events like this for people because we stock a whole lot of trout in some of these locations. This is not sustainable, however. We cannot simply grow lots and lots of trout and truck them to urban locations. We can do this on a smaller basis, but this is not how we're going to pay the bills for the long term. So is this heaven? No, it's Iowa. And so far, we're bringing the trout to people. Now, I got to do my my James Earl Jones voice. Ray, if you build it, they will come. They will come, Ray. Boys and girls, Ray, with their mothers and their fathers and their grandparents, and they will come. They will come to catch the trout. They'll come in the middle of the winter when we stock trout for ice fishing. They'll come to Ada Hayden in November when there's a gale force wind blowing. But like I said, this is not the only thing we want for these people close to home. We want to provide urban angling opportunities. This is Grays Lake. You can see Principal Building right there in the background, and Steve Conrady doing some of his master's research looking at the fish. We want to improve these kind of angling opportunities. So what's going on? Well, this is here in Ames. We've got ponds. We've got these water features getting put in the landscape all over the place. Right here, right here, right here, right here, right here. These places are going in. They're being constructed. They're part of our new expanding urban landscape. So where are we at? We're putting these things in, and they don't look too bad. I mean, I'd like to go to fish to a place like that, but unfortunately, they don't all look like this. This one that, looks kind of like these with the fountains in them. But some of them look like this. Plants starting to grow there. Acceptable location, maybe to go fishing. Some start to look like this. Some look like this. That's not so good. I don't want to fish there. I know I can't drag a lure through that. Some look like that. Some look like that. Some look like that. There's some of our harmful algal blooms from this morning. And that. And that. And that's what we don't want. And the other reason why I'm here is because I'm one of the people that gets the phone calls when we have situations that look like this, and I don't think any of us want to have situations that look like this. So if we want to prepare for a fishing event at an urban location, do we really need to have somebody out there in waders with a weed whacker cutting the tops off of the vegetation so we can actually pull lures through there? I don't think we should have to do that. I think we can do something better. So why are we here? How did we get here? And it's not because of the farms, I guarantee it. It's because of the silos. So Pat and I were having a conversation a few months ago, and I said, Pat, we've got all these urban ponds that we're building, and they're just not so great. And in fisheries, we get these phone calls, and people aren't happy, and they want to know what's going on. And she said, yeah. You know what? We have builders and developers that want to have better fishing and better aesthetics and better urban ponds too. And I said, great. And that's actually why I'm here to talk about this. I said, where are the specs for building these things? Where do those things come from? And Pat sent me the link. And it was a link to the DNR's website. And I went, oh. 31 years ago, 1986 is when the DNR was formed from the Conservation Commission and the Environmental Protection Commission. And you would think in that time frame, we would have figured out how to get up out of our desk and walk upstairs and talk to the folks that write those specs. But we in fisheries haven't figured that out until now. We want to get out of these silos. We do not want to be in the fisheries silo over here and maybe talk to our buddies in the parks and wildlife silo here, but never go upstairs and talk to our friends in water quality and stormwater. That is silly. All right, here's what we have online. For a fisheries pond, we want a drainage area of about 6 acres. Over there, on their website, they say 20 to 25. Pool size, between 5 and 8% of the watershed, 2 to 3% of the watershed. Depth, at least 10 feet. Depth, no more than 6 to 8 feet. Littoral zone, that's that place where the plants grow. Less than 15% is really good for fish. 20 to 50% is what we want to see. This and that are not the same. In fact, when you have water depth, and this is from the manual that my agency puts out, approximately 6 feet over the major portion of the pond will increase winter survival of fish. These are the dead fish after a winter kill. And this equals this. So, what can we do? Well, this is the design example that we have on our website now from our water quality folks. And again, are 12 to 18 inches deep for at least 15 feet. That gets us this. On the fishery side, we say a 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 slope for 5 or 6 feet and, just build it in. And that will have some good littoral zone area. From the water quality side, all this bench all the way around. Forebay, great idea. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. But this is what they're suggesting, and this is Terra Lake and Johnson that just got built. And you can see right here along the edge in this part of the lake, we have that shallow bench, and for the liability and other reasons. But for the rest of the lake, we've got some pretty steep sides. We've got maximum depths of over 20 feet. The place where the public accesses it from this area that's lawn is where you have the bench. And the parking is over here and up here. And these areas, which are native prairie plantings, we aren't promoting as much the access. Access is still available, but we're not saying, hey, run up to the lake right here. We have the safety considerations there, but not necessarily the whole thing. Here's a plan that has the forebay. Why would we want to do that? This is a pond in Des Moines, 2005. Watch this. 2009, it's not so much a pond right there anymore. 2011, it's really starting to grow trees and, might be a nice part of the park, but it's not a pond. 2016, forebays are a great idea. This is right here in Ames, Moore Memorial Park. Fantastic. Water comes in up here and over here, forebays collecting that sediment. Water gets trapped behind there, comes through in high flows, and we have our little fishing dock right here. Now, it's a good example of the forebay. However, this is all 6-inch deep water, so our fishing structure not so great, but we're moving forward. So what can we do? Well, when you're walking along a lake or you're on a hike, you're never going to get to where you want to go on that first step. It takes a lot of steps to get from next to the lake to where you can see the lake to the full view of where you've been. It takes a lot of steps. I'm not saying that we're going to fix this today in one step, but I think we need to provide another option in our Iowa stormwater manual. We need a fishery and recreation wet pond that is deeper, steeper, and has a smaller watershed area to pool area ratio. Why? This is a fish ladder. Now, fish ladders are there because fish want to go back from where they came from. In these small urban ponds, if we don't plan for fish retention at the outlet structure, the fish are going to leave when we have a big storm event. So we aren't going to put fish ladders to put them back, but fish go with the flow. So we need to plan to either have smaller watersheds a little bit so that we reduce that maximum flow and blow all the fish out of the system, and also some planning to keep fish in the system rather than leaving. And cleanable forebays. So during that construction phase, throughout the watershed of the pond, if there is erosion and that's not always getting trapped by the sediment fences, that we can clean that out before it ruins the pond for the next 20 to 50 years that people are going to be living next to it. Get that sediment trapped before it gets in there and messes up the pond. Because we don't want this to look like this by the time the construction's done. If we do these kind of things, we can have lower maintenance, improved aesthetics, and improved recreational opportunities. We really do want to provide quality fishing nearby, and we want to keep pond from becoming just another four-letter word. And lastly, we want to provide kids great fishing experiences nearby, because is this heaven? No, it's Iowa. And if we start building a lot of these things better and for fishing opportunities, unlike necessarily what we're doing today, we can have opportunities like the happy people you're going to see up here in every one of your local communities. And that's one of the things that I really want to see in the future. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? We're a few minutes past.
Yeah, Wayne.
Farm ponds.
Yes.
NRCS always talked about a 20-to-1 up to a 40-to-1 ratio of watershed to the surface area. Why is it so low?
The question is, NRCS would say 20-to-1 to 40-to-1, and that is absolutely correct. It can go down to 12 to 1 with what we have here in Iowa. So I was showing that minimum value of 12 to 1 versus some of the other maximum values. Saw another question up here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. The most intriguing slide of your presentation was the one that showed the number of fishing licenses and then plotted the population growth of urban areas and the decline of population in rural areas. And what was so striking to me about that slide was that it almost exactly parallels the rise of the industrialization of agriculture in the Midwest, well across the country really, but in Iowa particularly. That, during the Nixon administration, Mr. Butts told us you either get big or you get out. And so the same forces that are polluting our rivers, which may in waterways, which may contribute to the decline in fishing licenses as well, also keep populating our rural areas and small towns. So that's the price that we pay for the choice that we make about the way we make our living. So it was just a striking slide to me, and I wonder if you want to comment on that.
Do I want to comment? I want to have a job tomorrow. Therefore, I will calculate my comment as we have seen some things get a whole lot better in terms of our fisheries since 1972, including our huge successes with trout streams in northeast Iowa and our lake restoration program here in Iowa. And in some of the things that have gone negatively can be balanced with some things that have gone positively in our rivers and streams. Rick and I were talking earlier today that you can catch walleyes in a bunch of our rivers now that you couldn't catch in the 1970s. So while some of it has gone in a direction that you've described, I would argue that we have some positive things going as well. Yeah, Tom.
Do you have any success stories on once a community receives a pond after developer, the HOA has a pond, about retrofitting or coming back and making basically what is a lagoon into a successful fishing?
You know, the question is, do we have any success stories about taking some of these ponds that maybe got filled up during the construction process, or maybe were designed not to be that deep in the first place, and retrofitting them and making them better? And we don't have a lot of those success stories because it's pretty expensive. And if you've got a whole lot of homes around a pond or a detention basin like that, they may not be too amenable to the excavators and dump trucks that you have to have traverse that location to get the sediment out. I think more than trying to fix the ones that are there that are problematic, I'm going to encourage the engineers that are in here and the people that design these. We're going to be much more successful building them with those forebays and being deeper in the future as urbanization expands across the state than doing that. Yeah, Tom?
As a follow-on, so that, but the idea that would be to maybe work with other organizations to reduce the continued degradation of what we do have.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying that we can't go in and restructure some of those, but that, it's going to be kind of a twofold deal, or maybe two-pronged. One prong is, did the city get the property, and is the city willing to invest in cleaning out all that sediment and making it something different than what it currently is? Or does the homeowner association have that, and are they willing to invest those dollars? Now, it's probably far more likely that a city is going to than a homeowner association, but the homeowner association version is probably more likely to say, let's put some aeration in, maybe let's do some nutrient treatment to get things better, but that's never going to probably be a sustainable fishery, whereas some of these other ones in city ponds, city areas, if we can improve the depth and do some of those other things, we can create long-term fisheries in those locations. Yes?
What other partners would you suggest might be important to have involved in something like this? I love the idea of putting the urban and the fisheries together. I can see where there might be conversations with developers, engineers, et cetera. Who else might need to be at the table to have a good conversation? Army Corps of Engineers, NRCS?
So that's a great question. Who should we have at the table when talking about this? Well, the first people, and the gentleman sitting right behind you, John, is helping me. He and I have had conversations about, hey, the first step is let's get that second option in the stormwater manual so that we aren't only telling communities to build this thing that's 3 to 6 foot deep and covered with vegetation throughout the year. You hit on the really important ones. The developers, absolutely. The engineers who are going to design these basins that are going to be in neighborhoods, absolutely. You know, if it's deeper and has some fish potential, but more importantly, isn't necessarily ringed with aquatic plants or subject to algae blooms, that's going to be improved resale and sale value for those homeowners. I do believe that NRCS could be a potential partner. They have been designing ponds for a long period of time. However, my understanding is that they aren't doing as much of that anymore just because they are overwhelmed with the work to be done on grass waterways and things like that. You also mentioned the Army Corps of Engineers, and most of the designing that is being done now is according to their specs, and some of those are a little bit troublesome for landowners because they're asking for a lot of riprap and a lot of investment in stone around the edges to mitigate potential shoreline erosion that really don't seem to be that much of an issue in these smaller basins. So, yeah.
One more question?
Jerry. Yeah, no, yes, sir.
Between you and Rick, who's the better fisherman?
Rick is a lot more experienced than I am.
You do want to keep your job, don't you?
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for staying. You will get a questionnaire, a survey for this. It helps us plan immensely. Drive safe. Look to see you again next year at this time. Thank you.